right, I'm Isaac Satten, Director of Client Communications for IBISWorld. I'm excited to be joined today by Josh Morozowski, our Director of Product Growth and Integration, who specializes in the banking sector. Josh has worked closely with our largest commercial banking clients over the last decade and has an intricate knowledge of the use case for lending professionals. He's been gracious enough today to take some time, share with us a bit about how our clients are using industry info currently, and a few advanced ways to use IBISWorld information specifically for a lender. With that, let me throw it over to Josh.
Thanks, Isaac. Excited to be here today. The banking industry is certainly going through lots of changes, and they're affected in many different ways, positively and negatively based on economic conditions. But there's certain things that always kind of remain true. And there was a recent study done by kind of Barlow Research where it took a look at the competitive landscape, which hasn't been a secret and it's always been a competitive environment. But I thought it was really interesting to see that 40% of your current customers are being solicited by 5 or more banks. In today's kind of environment, 80% by at least one other soliciting bank. And the top reason you could probably guess of why a customer would actually switch in the banking market would be because they are getting better rates, better terms within the industry. Oftentimes that's something that's outside of your control as a banker, as a relationship manager. But the second largest reason was that the bank didn't have a good enough understanding of my business or my industry. And that's something that's readily available for anybody that currently subscribes to IBISWorld and our industry information, as we have over 1,500 different industry reports available across our board to really be able to better understand the operating environments of your customer, of your prospect within the space. And the trusted advisor moniker is something that's been here for quite some time in the banking space. And it's becoming more and more apparent that banks are becoming consultants for the businesses they work with, and the businesses are looking for value-added information from their banking partnerships as well. So that's something that we've seen as far as a shift, and really why does industry information matter kind of within the marketplace, and beginning kind of with some of the broader strokes and understanding of their business and industry has become an integral part of the selling process overall within the financial market space.
Awesome. That definitely gives us a good overview to get started with here.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for sure to be able to take a look at. One of the things that we're seeing, obviously interest rates are something that has been talked about as they impact the bank's kind of bottom line. They fluctuate quite often in a volatile area, so whether it's positively or negatively at different times in the scale, but right in the high interest rate environment that you may see, you're able to really sell the bank on value, right? It's not as transactional services that we're looking for. So it's going back to the trusted advisor kind of concept and being able to deliver value-added information and insight to your customers. And in a higher interest rate environment, that's really where we can see building a relationship based off of insight and information can really differentiate you kind of within the marketplace.
Sure. So if I'm the lender and I'm trying to get the upper hand, if you will, in a situation or really understand the client, what's kind of the best way to go about that you would suggest? Or what's something that I might be missing in terms of IBISWorld that it can assist me with?
Yeah, so it's been really exciting. We've seen a big, significant growth in number of users on our relationship manager and lending side of the business. In fact, over the last 12 months, we've seen 100% growth as far as people hitting our website on the relationship managers across the banks, which has been fantastic. I think it's certainly some of the dedication of our staff across the board of spreading some of the awareness, and the banks also being able to see the messaging of what's happening in the marketplace in order to make sure that the tools that are necessary are available to their team members in order to complete their job. So the 3 kind of pillars that we say, or 3 Ps that we kind of call them of how IBISWorld helps a relationship manager would be from prospecting, pre-call planning, and pre-screening. So those are the 3 types of applications that we see industry information really helping support a relationship manager, a banker, kind of across the board. And one of the first things I would say is IBISWorld just released 2 months ago state industry reports. And that's something that has really helped enhance the prospecting ability for a customer. So if we're looking at a specific industry, like long distance freight trucking, you'll have a specific report within that state also. So we write reports across all 50 US states. There's over 23,000 different state industry reports, which is a crazy number to say out loud. Really being able to help understand better the local environment of your customer. And my 10 years working as a client relationship manager, mainly supporting the commercial banking clients, as you have mentioned kind of in the intro. The most frequent question that I was asked, can you give me more information based on where I'm located?
Yeah, I was just looking at this the other day, and if you haven't recently checked out the state report collection, if you've previously subscribed or looked at it in the past, just Illinois specifically, I know this was a conversation with somebody where previously I think we had something like 50 or 60 titles. We now have 620 plus titles for the state of Illinois, and that's unilaterally across all of our different states that we offer. So, people wanted the ability to look across states, compare and contrast industries. So really robust. If you've looked at that in the past, I highly encourage you to look at it again because it's essentially a different product. There's so much new content there.
Absolutely. One of the things that comes along with those industry reports is a state economic profile for every state as well. And this is really the beginning of the journey from a prospecting standpoint that IBISWorld can kind of help with both at the state as well as the county level. So we understand there's some larger states that may have differences, right? If you think of California, Texas, where north and south or east and west operate quite differently. Maybe you only have your footprint or your selling kind of area is one section of the state. So being able to drill down to a county can be something that can be extremely important also. But where we hear our banking customers all the time tell us IBISWorld's value is the granularity in our information. It's providing industry information at the level where their customers, their prospects are operating, right? So we'll have trends on manufacturing and healthcare and construction, but those are huge areas of the economy. And there's very nuanced, different types of companies that work in each of those spaces. And the differences are really the stark areas. So, right, the devil's in the details that we're able to see here. And when we're talking about prospecting, it's fantastic to be able to see, okay, for the state of Illinois, let's look at a couple of different quick ways to be able to find what industries we might want to work with. So we can see solar panel manufacturing from a revenue perspective is the quickest growing industry within the state. We can also filter by the number of new businesses coming on board. So we can see sustainable building materials, right? There's 500 different businesses within the area, and we're seeing new entrants kind of enter into the market, which could be great opportunities for bankers to make some relationships with some startup companies or companies that are newer into the marketplace that they're working within.
Yeah. I also love about this, there's the exportable functionality right at the top right-hand corner. You can download all 667 industries that are covered, see all the stats there. So if you want it in your own Excel or manipulate it a little bit further, there's that ability for you. You can filter it right in this tool, but just such a great resource that we've added. And ultimately, for those of you familiar with our Industry Wizard tool, it's almost like the Industry Wizard living within the state content itself.
Absolutely. Just to show the functionality of the added layers, if we want to look at Adams County just as a general aspect, certainly you'll get some of the insight of the economic performance in the county versus the state level that we saw on the previous page. So you have the ability to do the same filtering and ability to kind of dive a bit deeper in a more targeted geographic footprint as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So now it's showing it specifically for that county. I mean, the amounts of data segmentation has got to be in the millions upon millions for us. It's crazy how granular you can get with this tool.
That would be a very slow Excel tool if you were still working or prospecting off of Excel and putting data together.
Yep.
So the second area of when we talk about prospecting, this is a great lift to be able to identify industries you might want to be able to work with. Certainly, you can pre-screen some of those stuff, which we'll talk about in just a moment as well. But the bulk of where IBISWorld helps relationship managers or bankers is from pre-call planning. It's the crux of the frequency or the highest amount that we would see people come to our website in order to get information for. And it's really to help the sales process overall. So whether it's you're beginning from a cold call aspect, right? There's really no such thing as a cold call in today's environment, or at least there shouldn't be, with the amount of information that is readily available either on the company's website, on their LinkedIn, on third-party resource providers, and internal data that you have. So for getting a quick understanding of the industry, being able to either lead with some key value propositions that we will list as key trends within our lending at a glance view for My IBISWorld for Bankers. So this is put together as the top 6 or 8 different data points that we see across our 40-page industry report, right? Nobody has time to read a 40-page industry report before sending an email or making a call. It's just not actionable. But what we can do is spend 2 to 5 minutes to get up to speed about what's happening for a particular customer, what's happening in their environment, and be able to deliver some high-level insights to show that you understand, you can demonstrate that you have an understanding of their business, their industry, and areas. So key trends to be a great kind of area. I kind of call these our value propositions because you can show that you understand what's happening as far as the highest level of insights within their space that are going to impact them as a business.
Yeah.
And right above there also, which I kind of browsed over, the call preparation questions. These probably tend to be one of the most popular areas of our report. And you can kind of click learn more to pull up a list of about 15 as we provide a multitude of different questions and really in 3 different ways. So when we're thinking of a banker, role-specific questions are great because oftentimes you may not have the chief financial officer, who might be the kind of golden goose of who you're trying to get in touch with at some point. Maybe you have an admin or you have somebody in sales and marketing that you've been working with, but being able to ask questions either based off of who you're meeting with. So if you're meeting somebody in operations, being able to be up to speed about what's happening in them or what their concerns may be from a roles perspective. But then also being able to scroll down and say, hey, here's some finance questions. And these are all industry specific. So these are made for, in this case, long distance freight truckers, but we have it available for 1,500 different industries to really get specific. And this could be a great way to ask a financial question. And then you go, you know what? I don't really know that. We should probably pull John or Bill or Marie into the conversation in order to help progress or bring more people as part of the sales process. Yeah. So it's been a fantastic tool to help spread yourself across the company and be able to meet different influencers or stakeholders that will be important to the lifelong kind of sales process and journey that you're on.
Yeah, and both of us having our own experiences in sales, we know that any kind of decision-making process, there's a certain, I think it's like 6.3 individuals are typically involved. And I'm sure for any type of movement forward, it's not just made in isolation with one person in a silo. So you do really need to branch out and get those other people involved, build those relationships up and make sure everyone's included who's part of that decision-making process.
Yep, 1,000%. And just to scroll down to give some ideas of some other questions, we'll have external impacts. These are actually make up 50% of our risk rating tool. I think it's important to know that credit and underwriting is our largest user group here at IBISWorld. We support really well and fit into the process of evaluating the difficulties of an operating environment and industry level to help populate a credit memo. So we have questions on the front end also. These are things that you can kind of work with your credit team internally. You can see what they're kind of looking at. And this makes up 50% of that risk score in advance and be able to get mitigants from the customer before kind of moving over or submitting to your credit partners to hopefully speed up the overall origination process. I think one of the things that I've heard from speaking with bankers is the more questions you get from your underwriting partners or credit teams, it's one more step to a no. So if you can try and work out that aspect, and we'll talk about that from a pre-screening process, right, which is the third P that I mentioned, and work with your credit partners in advance, these are a great way to try and collect some of that insight. While the internal issue questions are based off of key success factors, these are things within management's control, how a business would differentiate themselves from one another. Yeah. So really being able, that's an important part, knowing the management that's in place and kind of the ownership level insights of who's running the business for the banks, being able to ask some questions that are directly kind of impact their abilities and kind of their unique sauce that they can bring to the marketplace and the relationship is a great way to be able to learn more about their inner workings of the organization.
Yeah, and I'll do a little promo here for all you lenders out there who maybe your credit team, your analysts aren't using IBISWorld as much. Let them know they have access to all of our banking clients. It's a bank-wide resource. It's very interesting from our end that we have certain customers that we, all of the relationship managers, all the VPs of lending use the information, and maybe it's not as heavily utilized in the underwriting department. And then we have other banking clients where it's the exact opposite, that every single, loan that's reviewed goes through IBISWorld, goes through the process, but maybe the relationship managers don't access it every single time. So, don't be afraid to let them know that they have access to the tool as well. They can go kind of double check it, that it's a great industry to be lending into, based on your bank's criteria, but it is a bank-wide resource that we always want to promote that.
Absolutely. And speaking kind of on credit, I'll roll through this lending view at a glance. Again, kind of the main starting spot or the hub for our relationship managers in today's kind of environment. We'll have financial ratios, and these typically are viewed as a credit product. So the question is, why do you have some of this information on the lending kind of tab? And there's a multitude of reasons for that. We kind of include the cash convergence insights here because days payable, days receivable, these are very easy terms for you to connect with your customer, right? We're not talking about what's your debt over EBITDA or different insights that maybe a business owner won't understand. but they'll understand that, hey, it's taking me longer to get money in from my vendors, or I'm not receiving products as quickly as I used to, or my invoice is higher than it ever has been before. Those are things that they'll see on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to show that you're monitoring the trends. So within the industry financial ratios, you have the ability to select the type of customer size that you're working with. So based on the asset size of the business you might have, you can select 10 to 25 million. It will update that, and there's a list of about 70 of these. I use a control F, just go to days payable, days receivable. Again, back to that cash convergence kind of insights, because one of the most difficult times, or one of the first hurdles you have to get over as a relationship manager to the evolution of the sale, and a lot of bankers I've spoken to are actually a bit hesitant of asking for this, is to get the financial information from the customer. You never want to lead with that. So if you can ask questions and say, hey, we see for a customer of your size, days receivable is actually increasing right now. It's taking longer for you to get your money. Has that been a trend that you've seen kind of across the books? That's something where banking products fit really well into money coming in, money going out type scenarios. But it might cause your customer or prospect to go into, especially your prospect, go into their files and say, let me go find that out. You know what? I'll share this insight with him. And you're getting one step closer to the sale, but also you're learning more about your customer's processes, which is going to make you a lot more knowledgeable and dangerous of what types of products may fit for this specific customer, but as you have a more targeted conversation about their cash flow or their liquidity.
Sure. And let me just point out again, because again, for even people who have been using our product for a long time, we've been making some big overhauls in terms of format and layout. This is actually towards the back of the content, the industry financial ratios and the key statistics chapter. And if you just scroll up real briefly there, Josh, I love the ability to bracket it into the different asset size or the different size of the different companies, depending on how large they are. That's something that we've had for a little bit now, but just another great way to get to that more specific information based upon the prospect or the client that you're working with.
Absolutely. And I've been talking about these 3 Ps kind of interchangeably a bit here as well. If we're working within small business, right, every kind of bank is divided into different revenue bands and what types of customers they may be kind of working off of, either on the smaller side and kind of some business banking or lower middle market customers, or some of your large corporate. We've heard often, especially from small businesses, that there may be a requirement for something like a debt service coverage ratio. So you can try and take a peek and say, you know what, I'm looking at along this freight trucker, where do they have to be kind of within there? And anything kind of around above 1.5, 1.6. There's a great article that yours truly wrote on our media center, which is a great kind of resource that you're able to kind of take a look at. To be able to get relevant content about what's happening in kind of the marketplace, especially on some areas where it's more of a ebbs and flows that will impact or be short-term kind of insights that you should be aware of. There may be minimal requirements for banks. So you may be able to use this to pre-screen and talk to your credit partner if, on average, you're not fitting that requirement. If it even makes sense to use this customer and kind of prospect them and spend time trying to set up meetings if they're not a bankable customer in the end.
Yeah, I've always thought it interesting. I know some of our larger banks have built into their systems that if they don't meet certain thresholds that are in line with various data points that we have, you can't even proceed past a certain point. So it saves a tremendous amount of time of just saying, sorry, at this time, you guys aren't in a space that we're looking to do additional business with. So making sure you have kind of those checks in place for sure.
Exactly. And as we were kind of talking about those financial ratios, one of our newer products over the last year that we've kind of enhanced has been our segment benchmarking. And the functionality that you pointed out, Isaac, I think is key, because while I mentioned the most popular question I've been asked is kind of, can you provide me more information based on where my customer is located? Not a far distant second is, can you give me more information based on my customer size? And that's because of, as I mentioned, how the banks are segmented selling. And so the segment benchmarking tool, what we're able to do is kind of take a look at different size companies within an operator. So we can see 500 plus employees in this case have the largest market share. We're forecasting them to even be growing that market share closer to 70% over the next 5 years here. And that trend is increasing. We're able to learn more about the actual performance of some of these different customers. So if we're meeting with a $5 million freight trucker, what you can do is click on 100 to 499 employees. They have an average revenue of about 4 million that we're seeing here. Let's understand their environment. And I always kind of use the analogy for this if you're meeting with a brewery, one of the fastest growing industries across the country, as far as new entrants in the marketplace, you're not bringing them an Anheuser-Busch 10K and say, let's see what our goals are for the upcoming year, right? You can't bring $1 billion insight to $1 million company.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding how that specific segment is performing, how does that customer fit within the overall industry, taking out the noise, right? Take out your top players that you're not really concerned with because they're not a peer. They're in a different level. At some point, we need to understand kind of the hold that they have in the marketplace as they may be a competitor. But when understanding the performance or the productivity aspects of the customer in this size, being able to take out that noise and say, okay, we're looking at a forecasted growth of an actual decline within this segment over the next 5 years. That's something I want to know if I'm looking to enter into a relationship with a specific customer or a new customer, especially.
Yeah, I know for me with segment benchmarking, we heard for years our clients asking us about being able to qualify down into these different brackets. But even more so, what I love about it is that it's really interesting to see, even in the same industry, the big variances from the segment to segment of, what it might look like for, like you said, that $10 million company versus maybe that $800,000 company versus that $50 million company. You might see some pretty big disparities there that before it was all just rolled up to the high level of the industry. Now you can get it down even more granular with this tool. So that's the segment benchmarking tool, which is yet another new product that we added on in 2022.
Yeah, and there's some great additional features. We know SWOT analysis is pretty popular from an underwriting perspective, but also from relationship management. Again, anything you can see in advance to kind of learn a little bit more of and have these types of conversations, fill in the gap and help kind of you get a better understanding of what issues they may be dealing with. These are all chapters in our full-length industry report. So if there was something that, I heard a banker on a previous deal, this was an issue, and I see it kind of here, you can use this as a checklist and say, let me go find out more before I even start this opportunity, or before I pass it along to credit. Let's find out some mitigants that we can put in place to have as a discussion point as we're presenting this opportunity moving forward internally. So you can use this as kind of a nice way to kind of see any hurdles or red flags you might hit along the way before getting into some of the different benchmarking statistics that the tool provides. We can see kind of from a revenue perspective or employment establishment, these are all kind of pretty traditional IBISWorld statistics or data points that we have across all of our collections, all of our reports, and we can see kind of how the company compares. One of the areas that I think is really exciting was entry and exit rates, because it's the first time that we've had this insight, and it's not a probability default, but what it is it's a really strong key risk indicator of what failure rates are of companies of this size in this industry. And having that in advance, again, working that with your credit partners and positioning it, hey, look, they have a smaller failure rate than the majority of customers of this size in this industry. So if there are things that maybe the bank isn't less comfortable with, you can use the data to help paint internal conversations and make your credit team more comfortable because of differences that, as you mentioned, there may be from a performance level based on the size business you are within a particular industry.
Yeah, and this has all been fantastic, Josh. And just a reminder to everyone, you all have a personal client relationship manager. If you had additional questions or wanted to schedule some more advanced training for your bank, your client relationship manager is always happy to do that. And of course, we have our enhanced help center where we're trying to put more and more content into to help you almost self-train and self-educate. Josh, before we wrap up, anything else you wanted to share or show us today?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity in order to kind of talk with you, Isaac, and kind of catch up and go over some of the trends that we're seeing within the banking market. I think this gives a great insight overall into kind of some different areas and different ways that the information can be utilized. The last thing that I'll stress, and we kind of mentioned a little bit, is you can use this information to get in front of your customer. So include it into emails, whether you're taking screenshots, whether you're just copy and pasting, put it into presentations for when you have a big meeting coming up. The more specific that you can get, so not only the industry that they operate within, but where they're located from a state perspective or the size business from segment, the more specific you get, the closer you kind of see them get to the screen at times, if it's a web video. And in person, you can get some more physical cues as well from that. So the engagement's really been up, and that's one of the biggest things that I have seen of the additional information IBISWorld's been able to provide over the last year. Is it's been allowing the relationship managers to have more targeted conversations and taking away some of the fear of talking about national unemployment rate, where why does that matter to a business that I'm meeting with? They don't care. this
Yeah.
is really being able to drive up engagement, which is, I think, is one of the reasons we've seen usage across our commercial banking portfolio kind of increase tremendously over the recent period.
Yep, that makes a ton of sense. I know the integrations has always been a big part of it, and we've made it easier than ever between different formats and just screen grabs, and it's all cited to IBISWorld. So please, we encourage you to use this data to make you guys look better. Of course, that's what you have it for. So with that, Josh, thank you so much. Again, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us here at IBISWorld. We're happy to help, and I hope this was useful for you. Thank you so much.